Brian Lohan and Davy Fitzgerald, two of the most important bricks in the yellow wall for Clare in the 1990s and early 2000s. In 95 and 97, they were the goalkeeper and fullback combination for Clare as All-Ireland champions and for the All-Star team of both of those years. Lohan looked out for Davy, Davy did his best to look out for Lohan, and you had a golden era in Clare hurling. Here is Sil O'Connor of Clare FM reminiscing in the good old days.
25 years ago this year, they were a long, long way from 2 metres apart, I can tell you, on that occasion, as they went in search of the Liam McCarthy.
John Troy missed it. Oh, it's swept away there by David Fitzgerald. Good save by the keeper.
There was times every now and then when one player would back up the other, as you would expect from a goalkeeper and a fullback, and the huge understanding that they would have between them. That's what they had. But the whole thing was based on a performance in a Clare jersey.
And it's Brian Lohan who makes the clearance. That's terrific full-back play.
As a player, as two players, they were absolutely top of their game when they were playing the game.
Things have changed quite a bit since then. Not only is Clare's golden era a bit of a distant memory, despite the 2013 success, but Davy Fitz and Brian Lohan now simply don't get on. According to Davy, their relationship has never quite recovered from a row between them over a Fitzgibbon Cup game in February 2014. Now, this is when Davy's Limerick IT side were drawn against Lohan's University of Limerick team in the competition's quarter-finals. LIT were 6-1 outsiders for that match, which took place at the UL grounds. Here's Philip Ivers, centre forward for LIT that day.
As far as I know, Tony Kelly was the only inter-county senior player that we had. And UL was littered with Clare, Kilkenny, Limerick hurlers, Tipperary hurlers. The minute we won the qualifying match, there was never a case of, oh, we don't want UL. I think it was a case of, we want to get UL and we want to test ourselves. And I think Davy was the very same, because I can remember going into a meeting when we were told we were playing UL, and big smile on his face. He said, this is the best draw we could have got.
Now, the legend of that day begins with LIT togging off and warming up, not at the UL grounds, but at the other side of Limerick City.
It was the fact that it's only 20 minutes over the road. So, and he wanted us to have a meeting before the match.
So it wasn't to do with being given a small dressing room or anything like that in UL?
There might have been a touch of that, yeah. There might have been. I don't think he was too happy about where the dressing room was going to be, more so than the size.
So with no sign of LIT at the changing facilities, the first sign of Davy's squad showing up at UL that day was when they emerged from through the trees beside the pitch. Spectators say it was this unprecedented sight of bodies appearing from nowhere. But what did the LIT players think?
Afterwards, everyone was like, even the media was like, oh, it was mental, he came out through the trees. But that wasn't planned at all. It was actually, we were driving up on the bus and we could see the pitch through the trees. But in UL, you have to drive kind of 2 kilometres around to get to the dressing rooms. So I think he more or less just saw the field, and we were after talking out in LIT anyway. So he said, he just told the bus driver to stop, that we'll walk through the trees to get to the pitch. But I think everybody became so obsessed with mind games that they all thought it was a masterstroke, but it actually wasn't. It was just a spur of the moment thing. It just so happened where we were after coming through the ditch that UL had their cones set up at that near goal. And we were running down to the far end, and he started calling us back. He said, no, we're going to use this end, and that's it. We didn't ask any questions. It's Davy Fitzgerald, you're not going to challenge him, are you? I don't think we used the cones at all. I think we more or less actually stampede all over the cones and had no use for the cones at all.
And did the bus stay parked there at the other side of the trees, and did he go back to the trees afterwards?
I don't think so, no. I think we used the dressing room afterwards as well, so maybe there was a little bit of mind games, I don't know. But he certainly hadn't those tuned into what he was doing.
LIT won the game, by the way. Tony Kelly scored 110 of LIT's 216. UL clocked up 113. There was no handshake between the managers afterwards.
Well, I can remember at the time, all right, there being a little bit of tension after the game. And we could never really figure out why there was tension, but there was tension between both sets of players And it's funny because there was players on the UL team that we would have hurled with underage and were good friends with, and the same with every other player from different counties. But there just seemed to be a little bit of a standoff after the match, and nobody really knew why. We just presumed it was because it's your local derby in college hurling that, you know, it's the same as a club match. And there's always going to be that little bit of tension. But I can't remember there being a little bit of a tension after the match, yeah.
A couple of months later, Davy rang Brian to try clear the air, but there was no sign of peace. According to his book, Davy said to him, "You know me long enough. You know I'd do anything for you. But when we're on opposite sides in a game, it's war. It has to be. You need to get over this." 1 year later, the sides met again. This time, UL came out on top. And once again, there was no handshake. We're now at 2015. Davy is still Clare manager, but they end up crashing out into qualifiers for a second consecutive year. And the divide gets deeper when Lohan calls for an independent review into the performances of the Clare team. Davy took this as a dig to his dad, who was county secretary, and Davy said in his book that he couldn't repeat in said book the text he ended up sending to Lohan. As you might imagine, things did cool down a little bit once Davy left his job as Clare boss. He took over as Wexford manager, and he joined us in studio in 2018 when he had just written this book, and here he is talking about his relationship with Lohan and with Jamesy O'Connor.
I don't actually have a grudge to hold against him now, and that's the truth. I'm just told the story as it was.
Yeah, it's the cold facts of what happened sort of thing.
Yeah, well, I think the lads have to accept this too. They were prepared to write stuff and say stuff, and that's fine. But now I think they've got to also accept that maybe I'm allowed to say what I want to say as well, you know. But I don't have a major... I'm fine now, no matter what the story is.
Last year then, Brian Lohan publicly questioned if Davy's passion on the sideline was genuine passion and described some of his antics as not great. Of course, Lohan would a few months later become Clare boss, and that meant a first National League meeting between them earlier this year, which Clare won, but again involved no handshake. A few months later, Davy appeared on the Sunday game, and it seemed he was in the mood for making up.
As regards going forward with Clare, and I can say this 110%, I honestly want to see Brian doing well, and that's 100%. And we'll come across each other on the sideline, and there might be no talk or whatever. I'd like to see him doing well. Disappointed that it is that way because I suppose I got hurt at the start from a bit of criticism, and probably Brian got hurt that I said stuff in the book. Maybe we should be big enough to forget about it and move on. There's a lot more things in life, so there is. But as regards Brian Lohan, the player, could say nothing, and I know, having dealt with him even professionally wise, is a good guy, and if we don't talk, we don't talk. But certainly going forward, I would honestly wish him the best.
And John, will you give that ball one big final twist for us? And the first team out, these games are going to be played at neutral venues next weekend. Who have we first, John?
On Clare.
So we've Clare out first. Got themselves back in the reckoning at the weekend. An important victory for them. They will play
Lochgarman.
Well. Clare and Wexford.
This week's quarter-final draw just could not have gone any other way. Just when it seemed like a period of self-reflection for humankind everywhere this year would thaw the relationship between these old comrades, they get drawn together in knockout hurling. There is a good chance that there won't be a handshake between them this weekend, and Sil O'Connor thinks it will be a while before either party gets around to building those bridges once again.
I don't think it's on any of their lists that when they're out of management, maybe in 20 or 30 years' time, that they'll ring up and make up. If it happens, it happens. You know, but I can guarantee you it's not on their list at the moment, and they have no intention of it because they just look at it as something that's passing by. I just know it's not even in their heads, but it's not against each other. It's just that it's not on the list at the moment. They would tell you on the bigger things to think about over the next few days.